Sometimes you might find that you'll create a component, and then as you build your website and you take a component and use it in a different context within your website, you might find, oh, it fits in there, but I wish I could just add one property to that component so it works in this context. And so when you go and add a new property into an existing component, I want to show you something or share something with you that I found and learned this week that you might find useful. So let's just go through a scenario. Let's say that here I have my front page template, which is my home page, and I have a card component here, and there's 3 instances of that card component. There's 1, 2, and 3. And if we go and have a look at what's inside here, we have our div, then we have an image, which is by default turned off, it's hidden. Then we have a heading, a paragraph, and a button. So I'm thinking that for this website, I want to use this card component as a loop item in my blog post. So let's go ahead and do that. So here on my screen, I'll go to posts and then categories. And for this category here, I'm just going to view that on the front end. And if we have a look up here, it says that it's using our index template. So let's edit our index template. And then in here, I will add a section and drag that into position. And then inside here, we will go ahead and add our query block and then our query template block. And then within our query template block is where we design our loop item that is going to be repeated as it loops through our posts. Now let's say we want our loop item to be that card component. We could go up to here and then we could get this component and drag it onto the page. And if I close this, now our query is outputting each blog post within the loop using our card component layout. Now I'll just go ahead and connect our card component to the dynamic data of the current loop item. So to do that, the heading, I'll click over here, and this is going to be WordPress, and then it is going to get the post title of the current loop item. And we're just going to repeat the process. So the content here will get the current WordPress loop items excerpt, limit it to 150 characters. And then the button text will say read more. And then the button URL, that will link to the URL. That'll be dynamic, and that will link to the current post items URL. And then for the image, we will link this to the featured image, and the image, we want to make it visible. And let's lay out our post in a grid so it's a bit easier to follow along. So with the query template selected, we'll select grid, and here we'll add our gap. And then as we move up the breakpoints, we will change this to a 2-column grid. And then as we go up to the large breakpoint, we'll change that to 3. And we also want to set the wrapper to the contents. So I'll save that. And now our post category, if I just preview that again, which we know is using the index template we just designed, these are our blog posts. But with our blog posts here, we probably want to add the date that the post was published on. So let's go ahead and add that into our component. So back here on our index template, let's go to our card component and click on modify. And then inside of here, let's go ahead and add a new paragraph block. And then I'll drag this into place. And then I'll click on content and I'll add a new property and we'll call this meta text. And we want to be able to map dynamic data to this property. So I'll select advanced and then I'll click connect. And then let's exit out of this. And let's go ahead and just change the font color to a light gray. And maybe we'll scale down the font size just a bit. So I'll go ahead and just exit out of this. And then on our component, for the meta text, let's map it to dynamic data. And here it's going to be the current WordPress item in the loop. And it is going to be the post date. And we'll do the publish date. The format, we'll choose this. And you can see there it is. So let's save and save. Back here on our post category page, let's reload. Now you can see the dates are being output dynamically to match the publish date of the posts. But now where we use that card component on our homepage, let's reload. And you can see we have extra space here. And if we have a look at the HTML here, we can see that it's outputting an empty p tag where that post meta property would be mapped to. But because there's no content added here, it's just showing an empty p tag. So I think from a workflow perspective, I think if you're ever editing an existing component, it's safer to have it hidden by default. So if we go back into where we're editing our index template, and here we are, there's our card component. If we modify this and go down to where our post meta was, and then click on visibility, let's add a new visibility and we'll say show, and here we'll say show meta, and let's do it hidden, and then click connect and get out of that and just save that. And now if we reload the page, you can see that space is gone. And if we have a look at the HTML, it is not outputting an empty tag anymore. Now, obviously, ideally, before you go and build your website, you've designed all the individual pages so you preempt what's going to be a component and how it's going to work. So when you're setting this component up from the get-go, you know how it's going to be used on your blog page and your archive. And so you're just doing all the properties from the get-go. But sometimes it doesn't work out like that, and I just thought this was a tip worth sharing. If you need a hand building any websites using Cwicly, then head on over to my contact page and get a quote. I'm going to link that in the description below. And on your screen right now is another video that you can watch to learn more about Cwicly. So I'll see you in that video.